From Conor McGregor's weak wrestling that led to a tap-out to Adesanya getting knocked out cold by Pereira, here are some UFC fighters' weaknesses being exposed inside the octagon. Starting off with the biggest name in UFC and his weakness. Yep, it's Conor McGregor and his wrestling. Now, he's known for his explosive striking and knockout power.
And it's nice posture for striking from Conor McGregor, really throwing the legs to the side, landing a nice big shot.
Trying to hurt Janssen with some shots, and I think he's...
And stepping into the octagon to face the undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov was not as good of an idea as he thought. McGregor has always had a weakness in wrestling, and it was exposed in the bout as Khabib was able to take him down repeatedly. Khabib, a dominant wrestler with world-class grappling skills, was able to control McGregor on the ground for most of the fight, ultimately securing a submission victory in the fourth round. The Irishman's lack of experience in grappling was evident, and it proved to be his downfall. Now, since that fight, McGregor has been working tirelessly to improve his wrestling skills. He's been training with high-level wrestlers and has stated that he'll be better prepared if he ever faces Khabib again. But he has truly fixed his weakness in wrestling. Or will it still be a vulnerability in future fights? Only time will tell. This loss was a significant one for Conor, as it was his first submission loss in his MMA career. Fans have been vocal in their reactions, with some praising him for his performance in the fight, with others criticizing his lack of preparation for Khabib's wrestling. But everything aside, his loss exposed the importance of being well-rounded in MMA. So even though he's been working to improve his grappling skills, it remains to be seen if he'll be able to overcome his opponent's wrestling abilities in future fights. McGregor's not the only fighter who can't wrestle, though. Cyril Gane can't either, and it showed in his fight with Jon Jones. Gane, a skilled striker with a 10-0 record, came into this fight with high expectations from his fans, but unfortunately, his weakness in wrestling was exposed by the legendary Jon Bones Jones. Jones wasted no time in testing Gane's wrestling skills and repeatedly took him down. The Frenchman was unable to defend against Jones's grappling and found himself in a difficult position on the ground. Oh, and of course, Jones was also quick to take advantage and neutralized Gane's striking ability, and so Bongamin's inability to defend against takedowns proved to be his downfall. It was clear that wrestling is a crucial part of mixed martial arts, and Gane's weakness in this area was exposed here. That said, Gane is still a young fighter with plenty of potential, so it remains to be seen if he can fix this weakness and compete at the highest level. I mean, wrestling is a fundamental part of mixed martial arts, and without it, fighters can struggle to succeed in the octagon. Fans were disappointed with Gane's loss too, but they remain hopeful about his future. After all, he has the potential to become a top contender in the heavyweight division. Still, he'll need to work on his wrestling techniques and conditioning to reach that level. The fight showcased his strengths as a striker.
Yeah, still 2 more rounds if he keeps attacking that body.
But also exposed his weakness in wrestling. It'll be interesting to see how he bounces back from this setback and continues to grow as a fighter in the UFC. Now, another popular fighter whose weakness got exposed inside the octagon is none other than Israel Adesanya and his weak chin in his fight against Alex Pereira.
I've been over the rules in the back, you know exactly what I expect. Listen to me at all times, keep yourself protected. When I tell you to stop, you stop.
He's so big.
The last Stylebender's loss to Pereira was a major upset that shocked the MMA world. Adesanya, who had previously lost to Pereira twice in kickboxing matches, was still considered one of the best fighters in the world.
He's got Pereira reacting now, but he's got to attack him.
Pereira there's so much danger when he gets close to you.
Though the Brazilian's power proved too much for him to handle once again. Adesanya's striking defense had been impeccable in previous fights, but Pereira's heavy hands were too much for him to handle. It was a reminder that in the UFC, one mistake can lead to a devastating loss.
Pereira's had his most success to the body tonight.
Oh,
He has a left hook.
he hurt him bad.
Oh, and now a right. Adesanya's on one
Oh, my
leg.
God.
2 more. Down goes the champion.
Despite the setback, Adesanya's fans continue to support him. They recognize that he's still one of the most talented fighters in the world and had faith that he would bounce back from this defeat, which he did. UFC 287 was one of the best fights I've ever seen. Adesanya faced off against Pereira once again, but with revenge on his mind this time around. Sure, he still had to take one hell of a beating, but hey, he did manage to knock Pereira out in the second round with one of the best knockouts the UFC's ever seen, which just shows how important it is to have good defense in the UFC. Though I guess Justin Gaethje didn't know this, as his defense against Eddie Alvarez was downright terrible. This was a glaring weakness that was exposed inside the octagon and ultimately led to his defeat. Gaethje, known for his relentless forward pressure and striking prowess, often neglects his defensive responsibilities. He likes to stand and trade blows, hoping to overwhelm his opponents with his power and endurance. But this strategy can be risky, especially against skilled strikers like Alvarez. In their fight at UFC 218, Alvarez was able to capitalize on Gaethje's lack of defense and landed some heavy shots that hurt the former WSOF champ. Gaethje's chin held up well, but he was visibly rocked and staggered several times. Despite his toughness, he was unable to weather the storm and eventually succumbed to a devastating knee strike in the third round. This loss was a wake-up call for Gaethje, who realized that he couldn't rely solely on his offensive abilities. He needed to improve his defense and become a more well-rounded fighter. Since then, he's worked on his footwork, head movement, and overall defensive skills. He's also shown a greater willingness to mix up his striking with takedowns and grappling, which has made him a more unpredictable and dangerous fighter. But it remains to be seen if Gaethje has fully addressed his defensive shortcomings. He's had mixed results in his subsequent fights, defeating James Vick and Donald Cerrone, but losing to Khabib Nurmagomedov and Dustin Poirier. And while he's shown flashes of improved defense, he's also been caught with big shots in these fights, indicating that there is still room for improvement. But that's not all for fighters with weak defense, because up next we have Daniel Cormier. He was known for his wrestling and grappling abilities, but his striking defense was exposed by John Jones in their first fight. Cormier was caught with several hard strikes that ultimately led to his defeat. In the rematch, Jones was able to neutralize Cormier's wrestling and win a unanimous decision. In his fight against Stipe Miocic, DC was knocked out with a right hand that he didn't see coming, highlighting his weakness in striking defense. While Cormier worked on his striking defense in his later fights, it remained a weakness that he struggled to overcome. His retirement from the sport came as a result of his last fight with Miocic, where he lost the trilogy fight via decision. And speaking of weak defense, we have Nate Diaz and his wrestling defense. Now, he's known for his toughness and submissions, but has struggled with his wrestling defense. In his fights against Khabib Nurmagomedov and Benson Henderson, Diaz was taken down repeatedly and struggled to get back to his feet. His opponents were able to control him on the ground, limiting his submission attempts and ground strikes. Also, even though Diaz has been working on his wrestling defense, it remains a weakness that his opponents can exploit. Fans have been supportive of Diaz despite his losses, as he remains a fan favorite due to his fighting style and his willingness to take on tough opponents. And that, folks, is all for UFC Fighters Weaknesses being exposed inside the octagon.